Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 34. This is it, the big one. The episode where we finally complete the game. Well, as far as the official end goal is concerned at least. Just like every other factory game, this one is also about continuously expanding, going for bigger and bigger factories. Apart from finishing the final main tech tree research, we will also reach the point where we can start using the end game power generation, making the fusion reactors obsolete. And to achieve that, we will need to expand our ray receiver setup, which will be quite easy. Our sphere is already producing more energy than our ray receivers can collect, so we should be able to produce the photons needed to make the antimatter rods. Before we get started, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, and clicking the like button will let me know that this video was worth making. If you want to help me make a living off this one day, please consider becoming a channel member, where you will get an early access to the videos as I make them, and for a one-time donation, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description. But enough talking, let's get into it. Now, I did have to record this one twice. The first attempt evolved into a situation where the deuterium production couldn't keep up with the demand, and I ended up chasing my own tail the entire time. To prevent that from happening again, we need to do one final fusion reactor crafting spree. And since you've heard the intro monologue, and I bet I used the artificial suns as the thumbnail, you already know that this is the last time we will ever be required to make these reactors. Basically, we only need to make sure that the fractionators are fully powered, and we will be perfectly fine. It is also quite fortunate that the deuteron fuel rods are also a crafting component in the production of the sphere construction rockets, so building all those extra factories will not go to waste after we switch over to the antimatter fuel. Yeah, 100 reactors should be more than enough for the rest of the time we will use them. I also wanted to rethink the way the different manufacturing centers deal with the deuteron fuel deliveries. Basically, I want all of them to pool their output into the original tower, so it can send all the rods through that spray coater. Right now, we have a tower that sends unproliferated rods out into the wild, and that lowers the overall effectiveness of our power generation through the cluster. Anyways, the reactors are under construction. We can go to the deuterium planet, and give it the power it needs to function properly. Just as a precaution, I also brought a good amount of fuel cells with me, just to make sure we can actually keep all these new reactors powered. As you can see, the old ones are already starting to run out of juice, so my fears were justified. One of the columns is slightly misaligned, but they will be replaced in the near future, so I'm not all that bothered. And we already have the next shipment incoming. I think our power situation is solved. We have plenty of deuterium en route to the fuel rod factories, so we can rest easy, and take care of the next step without being forced to rush things. And the next thing we need to deal with is the ray receiver situation. If you remember, our sphere is now generating twice as much power as the current setup can harvest, so it's about time we added more. Thanks to the previous attempt at recording this episode, I already knew the number of receivers that we will need to finish 2 more layers of them around the polar outpost. 28, in case you were interested. I also wanted to do a bit of research in this episode, so I decided to do the vertical construction line in the upgrade tree. This will allow us to build those Matrix lab towers a lot taller than before, cramming a considerable amount of computational capacity into a very small footprint. With these 2 extra layers of ray receivers, we will be able to boost our photon production quite a bit. We just increased the number of them from 8 to 36. That should last us a while. And we are nowhere near to the end of the sphere construction. If I remember correctly, we will need about 1.7 million rockets to complete it, and we are not even 10% of the way there. We will need to increase our launching capacity a whole lot more if we ever want to make some headway with this whole project. I mean, sure, we can add more launchers without problems, but we also need the rocket production capacity to feed those launchers, and that will require a lot of expansion. In case you're wondering what's going on the screen, we still need to feed these new receivers with the graviton lenses, so they can increase their output. Great, we are already below 100% satisfaction with the sphere's output. Given all the work we still need to do, going above and beyond will ensure that we won't need to revisit this thing for a good while. This outermost belt ring will be responsible for feeding the photons the receivers generate back into the tower for distribution. I think we can call this part of the video a success. Now, let's move on to other things. We can do the research next. For now, we will only deal with the actual consumer labs. Those are in need of a bit of rebuilding to accommodate the new white cubes. And with the increased tower heights we can achieve, they can be a lot taller than before. I still ended up crafting 100 labs, even though we will not need that many today. But later on, we will definitely need them, and a lot more than that. As we keep making room around the equator, I would like to move our research labs down there. Things around the poles are starting to become a bit cramped lately. Look at that tower. And it's not even the highest we can build. We still have 2 more levels left to research on the vertical construction branch. That's all the colors fed into the consumer labs. There will come a time when we only need to provide them with the white cubes, but we still have some projects left that will require the other matrices to finish. And thanks to all that demolition we had to do, our inventory is full of cubes. Let's get rid of them before we move on. We might as well add 1 more tower to this facility. We will chew through our matrix reserves faster, but at least we will have more capacity as we will expand our production labs later on. Well, time to add that final main tree research. That is what the game considers to be the end goal, but as I keep saying, a lot of players consider that to be the real start of the game. All the work before this point was just to lay the foundations for the inevitable mega factory. Well, we have a lot of antimatter piled up in the tower that deals with the photon separation. That pretty much decided what the next goal will be. It's time we finally shook off the shackles of fusion power, and brought forth the age of antimatter. The first step is to make a specialized item called annihilation constraint spheres. They will be pivotal in the production of not only the fuel cells, but the power generators that will use those cells. Thankfully, they are relatively easy to make. Only need particle containers and processors. And they don't even need a lot, just one of each. The only thing that will make this a bit of a hassle is the fact that they need 20 seconds to make. That's quite a lot, and even the increased speed of the Tier 3 assemblers won't be enough to really speed it up in any significant fashion. Well, let's see how far this many assemblers will get us. Good thing the antimatter fuel lasts a pretty decent amount of time before it depletes. Well, the fuel cells themselves need 4 components to make. That does make things a bit more complicated. Needless to say, we will need both the components and the end product to be part of the logistics network. Since we only have 5 resource slots in each tower, it is impossible to cram all the production into a single one. We will need to split the incoming and outgoing sides of the process between 2 towers, so both of them can have one of the slots dedicated to the warpers. The most numerous materials we need to make the cells are the antimatter and the hydrogen, so those will be the belts that will be the closest to the assemblers. Although in this case, I don't really think it's all that relevant. It will take about 24 seconds to make a single one, and that's plenty of time for the Tier 3 inserters to move the necessary amounts, even from 3 tiles away. Well, we have antimatter fuel rods being made. Now we just need a second tower to send them out to the logistics network. The next thing we need are the actual power generators. In this case, they are miniature suns. At least that's what they appear to be. In reality, it's a matter-antimatter annihilation reaction, contained in a spherical container. Because of the shape and appearance, it looks like a tiny star, but it's a bit more complicated than that. And this building we will definitely put into them all. I've been reluctant to make the fusion reactors all this time, knowing they will inevitably be replaced by the final generators. Okay, before we get too deep into that construction, we should take care of the incoming hive attack. I've been keeping track of their progress, and they are close enough now to actually pose a threat, so let's deal with them. And thanks to the defenses on Minerva, they were quickly dispatched. We can get back to work. We need to bring in the annihilation chambers to the mall to finish setting up the factory, and it will require another tower to be placed. It might take a little while for these to propagate down to the mall by themselves, so I decided to steal some from the production tower, just so we can build those generators ASAP. Alright. They are under construction. Let's leave them be, and let's see what else we can do in the meantime. Well, one thing that immediately comes to mind is proliferation. Just so you know, we've been getting an extra 25% extra energy capacity out of our fuels by proliferating them until now. In the case of the antimatter rods, doing this will only speed up the generation rate by 100%, but not increase the overall energy capacity. At least as far as I know. This does allow us to use half as many artificial suns to power things than we would otherwise need, so that is still a definite plus in my book. Oh, right. We should still have some spray coaters tucked away in the box at the mall, where we stashed all our outdated equipment. Okay, now need to make sure we actually have the tier 3 sprays on the logistics network. Well, It's all well and good that we have the spraying set up, but we still have a bunch of rods in the tower that need coating. Feeding them through the belt is a bit of a slow process. I suppose we should set up a temporary box feeder, so we can do this without having to sit there for minutes on end. There. 100% proliferated antimatter fuel rods. Until the introduction of the dark fog, these were the ultimate power generation tech in the game. Needless to say, as soon as we could, we switched out our old deuteron rods with these new ones. We can now go without refueling for a pretty good while. Since we had the sprays on the network, we could also start proliferating the science cubes. And since we were here, I decided to quickly double up the universal matrix production. I didn't want to do too much of it, just a bit extra. I still want the majority of our antimatter to go toward the fuel rods for now. And there it is. Our mission is now considered complete. At this point, we can finally start playing the game. Also, please try to bear with me while I try to dismiss that annoying advisor. I kept him off as long as I could, but there are moments when he still appears. Even though we are not even 10% done with the sphere, the overall shape is starting to come through the scaffolding. It will become more and more obvious what kind of an effect I'm trying to achieve. At this point it is still a bit hard to tell. Well, I think it's time. We have plenty of micro suns in our inventory, so we can start switching over from fusion at last. And we are now officially a civilization using matter-antimatter annihilation for generating power. This is always a big moment. At this point, there is no reason to keep wasting those deuteron fuel rods on generating power. They should all go toward making rockets. Time to start switching off the feeding for the reactors, and keep doing it as we keep adding more and more microsuns to the network. Look at all that power. We do need to be careful not to overextend the network though. Our fuel rod production is still in its infancy, so we need to pace ourselves. At this moment, we are doing great, making 10 times as many rods as we are consuming, but that's thanks to the overabundance of antimatter. The assemblers will soon eat up all of it, and then we will see a clearer picture as to what the real output is. But, I do believe that we should be safe to upgrade the power network on Vulcan at least. This is the point where we will start really ramping up production all over the place, and that will require a lot more smelting than before. With only 10 microsuns, we pretty much doubled the amount of power available on the planet. Not too shabby. This pretty much means that we can safely cut off the fuel supply for the fusion reactors, and rely on the antimatter from now on. For now, I just let the reactors use up the remaining fuel, and we will just decommission them when they are no longer doing anything. Until then, they can keep chugging along. And I think that's where we will end this episode. I think the next one will be focused around research. I would like to start ramping things up in that department, and that means we will start migrating the labs down to the equator. Although, before we can do that, we might need to make more room down there. Adding the antimatter fuel production might have used up the space we just freed up in the last couple videos. As for our new source of power, I don't really want to replace the fusion reactors on the other planets yet. I'm not that confident in the production capacity of the antimatter colliders yet. It will slowly ramp up as more of the sphere gets built, but until then, we still need to pace ourselves. So another thing we can do is the expansion of the rocket production, so we can hurry that along too. Anyways, if you haven't done it already, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, and clicking the like button will also help letting me know that the video was worth making. If you would like to help me make a living off this one day, please consider becoming a channel member, where you will get an early access to the videos as I make them. And if you want to give a one-time donation, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next one.